What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Believe Fantasy Football Show with yours truly, Michael Fabiano. I got my guy Tass back. What's going on, man? Like, you feeling better? I know you had a little bout of COVID there.
Yeah, feeling better. Got to watch some Thursday night football. Got some vindication with a Montgomery score and Jahmyr Gibbs with a slow start. But It doesn't mean that he can't still have the exponential rise that we think he can.
First off, it's one game, guys. It's one game. One game. Like, I can't stress that enough. So don't get crazy. But I know a lot of Chiefs fans are going to get crazy out there, and more in particular, those who may have started Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore. We're getting into that. I'm not surprised the Lions won the game. We're in a different world. It's a bizarro world, right? We drafted wide receivers heavy in fantasy, and the Lions are beating the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football at Arrowhead. I mean, this is kind of the world that we live in right now. Let's go through some of the performances or lack thereof. And we'll start off with the Lions. What did we learn about Jared Goff? Still can't trust him on the road. 14 points, 1 touchdown pass. If you like to roll with player props, you should be betting the under on Jared Goff's touchdown passes every time he's not in Ford Field. This is what he is. He was good last night from a real football perspective, but in fantasy, he just doesn't get it done on the road. It just doesn't happen. The backfield situation, David Montgomery is the lead dog, man. He had 21 touches. Jahmyr Gibbs had 9. And I know that they were talking about bringing Gibbs along slowly, and I'm sure that there are going to be weeks where he's going to pop more. But you know what worried me? I only had 2 targets in that game last night. Only 2. That's got to increase, or he will never in a million years be worth the 3rd or 4th round pick that everyone used on him. And I'm not saying that David Montgomery is going to be better than Jahmyr Gibbs for the remainder of the season, but I will tell you this. I liked Montgomery way more in drafts than Gibbs because of where you could get him compared to where you can get Gibbs. And we saw why last night. Montgomery's a good back in the prime of his career. Again, but it's one game. It's one game. Amon-Ra was Amon-Ra. We love him. The sun god had a touchdown for us, scored 19 points. We'll take it all day long. We love them. We love Amon-Ra. And then we saw Josh Reynolds. He ran 29 routes. He had 7 targets. He had 80 yards. And if you are in a deeper league, he's potentially going to be someone you'll pick up next week. Another player on the Detroit side, Sam Laporta. He didn't have a huge fantasy game. He had 8.9 points, but he ran 26 routes, and he had 5 targets. And boy, did he remind me of TJ Hawkinson, just in a different uniform number. I think, and I said I had Laporta as a sleeper in the preseason, but I prefaced it by saying, rookie tight ends typically don't do anything. Tass, I liked what I saw last night from Laporta.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when a tight end gets involved on 3rd down and they start to become a security blanket for their QB, that to me always bodes well. You at least know you're getting some sort of floor out of that. And to go back to the Montgomery point, I think it was very apparent to me that while Jahmyr Gibbs obviously has the explosiveness from a decision-making standpoint, like he's not the same back as Montgomery. Montgomery makes the right read to get the 2, 3, 4 yards when you're at 3rd and short, and he's always out. He's going to be out there on the field. He's also a great pass blocker. He gave some well-deserved protection to Jared Goff last night, so that's going to keep him on the field.
No question. And let's not forget, I mean, Jamal Williams last year scored 17 touchdowns in that role.
He's got one.
The Lions.
He's got one.
And Montgomery's got 1 so far. So David Montgomery, my guess, will be ranked higher than Jahmyr Gibbs next week when we get into week 2. We've still got week 1 right in front of us, but let's continue on with the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes was Patrick. He was good. His numbers weren't awesome. Like 226 passing is not good for Patrick Mahomes, but he rushed for 45 yards. He had the 2 touchdowns and the pick, which should not have counted against him in fantasy. Unfortunately, is going to. Yeah. He still scored you almost 20 points. And it could have been more and it should have been more. But his receivers let him down very often in that game. Before we get into that, let's get into the backfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire started. And I know a lot of Isaiah Pacheco folks out there are disappointed. Pacheco got 12 touches. CEH had 7. But this was always going to be a committee. And Jerick McKinnon got 1 touch in the game, and that was it. Had 1 catch, which kind of goes in line with the Lions. They were the toughest defense in the league last year against pass-catching running backs. So I actually had McKinnon as a sit-em this week, and he did not produce. But that backfield's going to be a headache. There's going to be a week it's Pacheco. There's going to be a week it's McKinnon. And apparently Edwards-Helaire's in the mix there too. So get the Excedrin ready if you're starting Pacheco or McKinnon on a weekly basis. The receivers. Now, keep in mind, no Travis Kelce. I jinxed him, remember?
Yeah.
I jinxed him because I got him auto-picked, and I don't like drafting Kelce in the first round, and the next day got hurt. My fault. I'm superstitious. None of the receivers did anything to make us feel better about a consistent, productive option. None of them. Rashee Rice led them with 11.6 points. He ran 12 routes, folks. That was it. He was targeted 5 times. He'll get picked up on the waiver wire for sure. Marquez Valdez-Scantling ran 33 routes. He had 2 targets. Kadarius Toney, I mean, what the hell was that? Listen, dude, you're a professional. I don't care if you didn't have a training camp, you were hurt. Catch the flipping ball. Come on. And Patrick Mahomes was real good, a professional after the game and didn't get on him. Kadarius Toney cost them that game last night. He did. Bottom line, he cost them the game. He was terrible. And he ran 11 routes. That's it. I ain't playing a guy who's running 11 routes. He's going to get rage dropped across the board in fantasy. People are just going to be like, F you, Kadarius Toney. I don't want you on my roster anymore. But you know who the bigger disappointment was? Sky Moore. As bad as Kadarius Toney was on Thursday night, Sky Moore still didn't outscore him. Sky Moore scored 0.4 of a point. He did run 29 routes, but he's only targeted 3 times. And I get it. Like, everybody wants to talk Sky Moore. Like, he was getting bumped up into the 8th round in drafts. Guys, it's the Chiefs. It's the Chiefs. Like, did we not learn anything last year? Ball distribution is going to be different every week. Hell, Kadarius Toney could be their best receiver next week. But it's going to be a nightmare. And listen, if there's a receiver in Kansas City that I want on my fantasy team, it's still Sky Moore. But this is the reality of the situation in Kansas City's passing game. And Mahomes warned fantasy managers about this last year. You never know who it's going to be. He's going to throw to the open man. Rashee Rice was open in the end zone. He threw him the ball. And the other touchdown, Blake Bell. You know, people were jumping on Noah Gray. And Noah Gray ran 37 routes, which is great. 3 catches. And he didn't score the touchdown. That's what you got. Mahomes missed Kelce last night. I'll tell you that. And I would, like, as somebody who has Kelce now, even though I didn't want him, why are you standing on the sidelines? Go sit down. Take the damn weight off that knee. What are you doing, man? Don't run around and freaking go sit down.
Yeah.
Kelce.
Wow.
Jeez Louise.
I mean, the thing about that Blake Bell touchdown, that was schemed open. That was the schemed read for Patrick Mahomes. So that just goes to show, not only does Patrick Mahomes not care, Andy Reid doesn't care either, right?
No, they don't care. But they got burned by the receivers last night. They did. You know, Thursday night, it was the Chiefs potentially having a coming out party for one of their wide receivers. Don't tell me Rashee Rice came out.
I thought he impressed me the most, I would say.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, like, I'm not gonna crown him the best fantasy receiver in Kansas City right now after that performance. It's not gonna do it.
No.
Not gonna do it.
I might have had a touchdown prop on him. I'm a little soft on him because for a particular reason. Yeah.
Well done.
I don't know why. It was a crazy move, but it worked. So
well done.
There you go. Thanks.
Hey folks, it's one game, so don't get too crazy. Well, maybe if you have Kadarius Toney, you could get a little crazy, but don't get too nuts about it. Okay. It's one game, but kudos to the Lions, man. I mean, dating back to last year, I mean, they've been one of the best teams in football. They just keep winning games. They went into Lambeau and beat the Packers last year at the end of the year. Rodgers knocked them out of the playoffs. Next game, they go into Arrowhead and beat the champs, Patrick Mahomes. And I know, no Chris Jones. I get it. I understand. No Kelce. I get it. It's a dub for the Lions. And the Chiefs are sitting at 0-1. And I said this on my SiriusXM show. Chiefs aren't going back to the Super Bowl. I said it yesterday. They're not going back to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're not going to be a really good team because they are. They're not going back to Super Bowl. It's not happening. It's hard to do. It's hard to do. And they've been there quite often. I think this is not going to be their year to get to the Super Bowl.
Spicy. I like it. Do you feel differently about playing opposing offensive players against the Lions? I know it's one game, right? So it's a little bit of a wait and see. But what I was maybe most impressed with in that game was their defensive line and how much pressure they got on Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. And you know what, too? I know it's like a sexy stat on the defensive side. Sacks are still overrated. Aiden Hutchinson did not have a sack in that game. All that guy did is wreak havoc. The entire game, he was wreaking havoc.
So much pressure. I mean, that's because you can't sack Patrick Mahomes. That's why.
Right. But holy cow. And listen, man, their young kids made plays. The young kids that they drafted made last night based on one game. And I know it's only one game, but the Lions get an A+ in the draft for who they drafted.
Branch, Gibbs.
Yeah.
They look great.
Campbell made a couple of plays too. And Gibbs is going to get better. So you guys like to win money, right? I like to win money. I like money. I need more of it. You know how you win money? You listen to Jen Piacenti, our next guest. Jen Piacenti is one of the best in the business at player props. I call her the princess of props. And we're going to have her on every Friday to fatten your wallet. So let's bring Jen Piacenti on the show. Jen, you are the best in the business. SI.com/fantasy player prop, the princess of player props. DFS. If you want to win money, you listen to Jen Piacenti, okay? She's like E.F. Hutton. I know that's a really old example. Tass, do you even know E.F. Hutton? You're just a young, E.F. Hutton. When they talk, people listen. Jen, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Believe Fantasy Football Show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I just want to say before we kick off these player props and DFS plays, please bear in mind, it has been a long off season, and the first week to 3 weeks of the season is always a little tricky, right? Because we're kind of going with what we have projected and what we think will happen, but we haven't really seen it because preseason didn't really give us much of a glimpse. So it's a little bit more of a, guess. But after like 3 to 4 weeks, when we really get the data, that's when we'll really start hitting our stride. So we did hit our Sam Laporta prop for the Thursday night. We're believers. We're believers. And wow, 80% of the snaps, you guys pick them up on the waiver wire.
No question. All right. So let's get into your favorite props. And I know you love Cam Akers like I do. I have him as a stardom this week.
Yeah, I love him mostly because there's no Cooper Kupp right now. Of course, I love Tyler Higbee. He's definitely somebody you could play player props for as well because he's likely going to be heavily involved, possibly the number one target. But Cam Akers, listen, his over 2.5 catch prop pays plus 125, and his receiving yards prop is only at 13.5. Now, we know that the last time he faced the Seahawks, he had 3 catches for 24 yards. And we know that the Seahawks allowed 6.7 yards per reception to opposing running backs last year. That's the second highest amount. And they allowed the 7th best catch rate to opposing running backs. So we are in on Cam Akers. We think the numbers are nice and low. And we think he's going to pick up kind of where he left off last season because, look, who else is there?
Let's talk about Russell Wilson. And I have him listed as a player that you could start this week if you need a quarterback. And there's a prop that you like on Russell this week against Vegas.
Yeah, his rushing yards, over 15.5 rushing yards. If you watch any of the preseason, again, I know we didn't get a lot. We saw that maybe he's going to be using his mobility a little bit more. And that's kind of why we were excited about Sean Payton taking over, is we think that he will play a little bit more to Russell Wilson's strengths. Again, it's Las Vegas. They allowed a lot of rushing yards last season. So we're going to bet on Dangerous using his legs as well as his arms. So one arm, hopefully only one arm. Russ.
We don't want him throwing left-handed.
You never know.
For sure. Sam Howell's getting a lot of buzz in the fantasy community. I know my co-host at SiriusXM, Lindsey Rhodes, digs him the most. I'm intrigued to say the least. You like his passing touchdown prop.
And this is mostly because of the payout. So plus 140, again, I think you've probably mentioned this already on the show. The matchup with the Cardinals, come on. They allowed the 4th most passing touchdowns last season to quarterbacks. So why not Sam Howell? We think Terry McLaurin's probably going to go. Even if he doesn't, he still has Jahan Dotson, and he has both Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, who are good pass-catching running backs. So there's no reason to think that he can't throw to them as well. And let's also not forget Logan Thomas if he goes. Arizona has been the worst versus the tight end position for like, I don't know, like a decade now, it seems like always play your tight ends versus Arizona. So if Logan Thomas is ready, I know he's had a bit of a knee issue, but I'm firing him up. He's also a huge discount in DFS lineups. So I see Sam Howell possibly throwing for 2 for the plus money. Again, when it's plus money, it's not the most likely, but it's likely enough. I'm willing to bet it.
And you've got 2 final player props that people should be putting their money down on, Jen. What are those?
That's a good question. I don't have my player prop lists up.
I've got it. J.K. Dobbins.
J.K. Dobbins and George Pickens.
J.K. Dobbins over 58.5 rushing yards at minus 120.
These in my mind, and then I try to
When
pick the best
Piacenti talks,
Okay.
I listen, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, J.K. Dobbins. So what is it, 58.5, right?
Yeah.
Last I checked, 58.5. It's the Texans. Okay,
Yeah.
Look, I know they're supposed to be better. They drafted Will Anderson. D'Amico Ryans could be a defensive-minded coach, all of those things. But they allowed 141 rushing yards per game last season. I know they faced Derrick Henry a lot, but still 141 rushing yards per game. So maybe they won't be abysmal. Maybe they'll just be really bad. But either way, that's really good for J.K. Dobbins, who's finally completely healthy. He smashed this prop, if this would have been his prop, in all 4 of his final games played last season. And supposedly, we're going to see Lamar Jackson doing a lot more in the passing game. So that should free up, J.K. Dobbins to run on the Texans. So we're going to take the over there. And then George Pickens is 42.5, right?
Yes.
Passing yards. Yeah.
Yep, at minus 120.
Come on. And I know you probably like this, Fabs, because Kenny Pickett is like your sleeper pick of the year.
And I know I don't love Pickett this weekend. I do think the Steelers are going to win that game outright.
42.5. I mean,
it's not that high. Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, 6 of his last 8 games played, 9 of 17 as a rookie. Okay.
Mhm.
And a sneaky thing people don't realize is the Niners, they're a really good defense. Actually allowed the 2nd most receiving yards last season. So it's maybe a sneaky play there. I like him for the over 42.5 yards. I don't think it's that high of a bar to clear. He's a big play threat. One big play could do that for Pickens because that's the guy he is. And look, did you see that Pickett to Pickens connection in the preseason? It was exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. So those are the player props. Guys, you want to win some dough, maybe go through a few bucks on that. Let's go to your DFS bargains, Jen. Give me a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end that you like for bargains this week.
All right, we're going to do one of each. All right. Well, okay. So for bargains, I am going to go with Russell Wilson. I know he's not necessarily a start for you, but he does have, if it's DFS and you're just guessing, right? You're hoping to save money. And because I love this stack. Again, I think he's going to use his rushing upside. I think he could be really exciting. We don't know. New Joe Lombardi offense, Sean Payton. And I like stacking him with Cortland Sutton at wide receiver or Marvin Mims, both of which are affordable. Remember, Marvin Mims should be stepping in for Tim Patrick, who's now out for the season. We think Jerry Jeudy is banged up. Even if he goes, I don't think he really should be limited. Cortland Sutton is one that actually got the first read from Russell Wilson 31% of the time last year. He also the X receiver in the Joe Lombardi offense, right? Think of Mike Evans, think about these big plays that could happen. So I like that for Russ. I also think he's going to be mobile. And I think that rushing can really add up for you. So I like Russ and I like those 2 wide receivers. As far as running backs, obviously Deontay Jackson's the one everyone's going to do. But so what about Samaje Perine, right? Perine has a great matchup. Again, same. I'm just stacking Broncos here. I'm sorry. I'm not going to say Greg Dulcich, but this is kind of my value stack. Perine could be used a lot more than we expect. He should be targeted. The matchup is very, very favorable again versus the Raiders. Very generous to the run game. And then at tight end, we already talked about Logan Thomas. So let's go to Juwan Johnson. He had 30% of his team's touchdowns last year. Titans allowed, I think it's the 4th most PPR points to, is it the 4th most? 5th most PPR points to tight ends last season. So again, I'm not one that's buying in super big on Michael Thomas, but I do love Chris Olave in this game as well, but you have to spend up for Chris Olave a little bit. So Juwan Johnson, if you want a piece of this New Orleans game, is a nice, inexpensive piece to plug into your lineup.
Jen Piacenti, you are the best. You can find her at Sports Illustrated and only at Sports Illustrated. You can get her player props, all of her advice on fantasy football, DFS, everything. And you can follow her on X at Jen.
X marks the spot.
Not Twitter anymore. Yeah. Although I'm still trying to figure out, like,
whatever.
Like, you know how you like send out a tweet? Now, what are we sending out? Is it?
I feel like Twitter is my X now. What the heck?
Oh.
Nice.
Anyways.
Nice. That was good.
We love you, Jen. You're going to be joining us each week to talk about your best player props and DFS to help some people out there win a little bit of dough. You are the best, my friend. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Fabs. Enjoy the football this weekend, you guys.
All right, guys. Hey, week 1, man. Start them and sit them. This is my Monday morning quarterback. You can find it over at Sports Illustrated every Wednesday. It's updated daily as needed. It's the original, the one and only start them and sit them. We're going to give you a few highlights. Some players that you need to start this week and maybe some players you need to put on the bench. Now, I preface this by saying that a lot of the guys that I have on sit, you can't. You probably can't. And I get it. But if I'm out there telling you, sit Jerome Ford, like, I mean, I'm not helping you. But you guys, you take in the information, you decide what you're going to do. Quarterbacks. We're going to start off with some stardom quarterbacks, and I'm going to go Geno Smith here against the Rams, who may be back to the Lambs this year. We'll find out. But Geno and Metcalf and Lockett, looks like Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be able to play. That offense is going to beat down the Rams. Jalen Ramsey, obviously, no longer there. He's in Miami, and he's hurt. This is a good spot for all your Seahawks. So Geno's a guy I have in my top 10 at quarterback. Kirk Cousins. As good as Jared Goff is at home, Kirk Cousins is just as good at home. Now, Goff, we know, is not great on the road. Last year, he scored over 18 points in all but 2 home starts. Only 2. And one of them was against my beloved Dallas Cowboys when we smoked them. Hardcore. Buccaneers defense, not what it used to be. Start Cousins this week. Also, Tua Tagovailoa. He's got the Chargers. That's going to be a high-scoring game. What's the total in that one? Like 51, Tass? I mean, it's a high total. And that's going to be the best fantasy game of the weekend. Chargers-Dolphins, I mean, there's all kinds of fantasy love in that game going on. Start Tua. I actually kind of like Russell Wilson this week. And next week, you can make fun of me all you want. It's fine. Listen, it won't be the first time. I mean, the Raiders last year gave up the 9th most points per pass attempt. Their defense was 3rd most in terms of schedule-adjusted points. Like, they give it up to quarterbacks. Russell had one of his better games against the Raiders last year. He also had a crappy game against the Raiders last year. Is Russell a top 12 quarterback this week? Maybe. But if you're hurting at the position, or maybe you want a DFS play, it's a little cheaper. I like Russell this week.
Feels like the perfect Russell Wilson, good game. Everyone freaks out. The Broncos are back. Sean Payton is the hero. And then their season is normal, what it should be, not otherworldly,
Peyton's been talking a lot of, man, with the whole Russell and the kissing babies and all this kind of stuff. Let's hope Russell is back to being the Russell we knew from Seattle because last year he was dearly missed. A couple of other starts I like. Sam Howell against the Cardinals. Anthony Richardson, I think, could get some garbage time, and the mobility is where I'm looking. I can see Richardson throwing a couple of picks in the game, but I also could see him rushing for 60, 70 yards. So that's why I like him as a low QB1. Sit-ems. We're going to start off with Deshaun Watson. He's going to be active in a lot of leagues this week. I get it. And if you don't have a better option, start him, okay? The Bengals gave up the 3rd fewest points per pass attempt last year. They gave up the 6th fewest fantasy points overall in terms of running the ball. Overall, quarterbacks, 4th fewest points against the Bengals. This is not a good matchup for Deshaun Watson. I don't love Aaron Rodgers this week. I'm sure Mike Greenberg's not listening to this podcast, but if he were, he wouldn't be happy with me. You want to talk about a guy who's a massive homer and doesn't even care to display it all over the place. He's like me with the Cowboys, as I wear my Doomsday Defense t-shirt. But I don't love the matchup. My friends over at Fantasy Points Data, which is a great site, by the way, you should check it out. They showed that the Bills allowed 25% fewer points to the quarterbacks based on schedule-adjusted points. And I'm going to be talking about schedule-adjusted points a lot. And it's something that we're looking at last year's data, but obviously it will compile throughout this year. So it shows you how defenses do against quarterbacks that other defenses have faced, either on a positive or negative note. So there are going to be quarterbacks out there with a positive percentage, defenses with a positive percentage, which means they give up more points to the same quarterbacks other defenses have faced. And then on the flip side, negative percentages, they give up fewer. And the Bills were one of the teams that gave up fewer. This one is low-hanging fruit, but I don't care because there's not that many quarterbacks like I can tell you guys to sit this week that you don't already know. But Matthew Stafford, I can't play him. No Cooper Kupp, I ain't playing Stafford. Not playing him. I'm playing the Seahawks defense, though, all day long. I'll tell you that. Jimmy Garoppolo, 2 QB league. You probably got to play him. Denver. We talked about schedule-adjusted points, minus 16% last year for the Broncos. And they gave up the 7th fewest points to quarterbacks. I also don't like Kenny Pickett this week. I will say this, though. I love Kenny Pickett on the season. I don't want to play him in week 1 unless I'm in a 2 QB league. I think the Steelers are going to win that game on the field. That 2-point spread screams sucker bet to me. I'm just saying. It screams sucker bet. 2 points? Tass, am I crazy here?
No, I don't. I mean, look, it's Mike Tomlin. It's Brock Purdy coming back from injury, right? Like, are we
George Kittle's
sure?
banged up too.
Yeah, are we sure? How good are they going to look? I mean, McCaffrey will look good, and they'll run the rock for sure. No, I'm always in for Mike Tomlin Steelers money line pick. Honestly,
I don't know. It's just like one of those things. I sometimes you look at a spread and you're like, what?
Yeah,
and sometimes it's too easy and it ends up coming in, but a lot of times it doesn't. And I saw that line. I'm like, 2? That's it. The Steelers were barely, they were just above 500 last year, but I think Pickett's going to be good this year. I don't think he's going to be great this week, but keep an eye on that one. Running backs. Let's move on to the running backs. I'm starting Rachaad White. Volume wins in fantasy football. I'm starting him. The Vikings allowed 9 running backs to score 15-plus points last year, so White's an RB2 type this week. Keep tabs on Ken Walker. Matchup's great, but he's dealing with an injury. If he's a go, you start him. If he's not, Charbonnet gets the nod. J.K. Dobbins against the Texans. Until the Texans show me that they can do anything against the run, I'm starting every flipping running back against them, and Dobbins has got that honor this week. So I'm going Dobbins against the Texans. Cam Akers against Seattle. Seattle gave up the 4th most points to running backs last year, and the Rams have nothing else but Akers and Higbee. We'll talk about that. So Akers is an RB2 this week in fantasy. No question about it. I also like Javonte Williams as a flex. I like Pirine too, as Pirine's pretty good. He's only $5,100 on DraftKings, by the way. So he could be a decent value against a bad Raiders run defense. Khalil Herbert, Brian Robinson too. Go ahead, Tass.
Should I, in my standard league that I've been in for a long time, so we won't change the league format, which I kind of appreciate, should I flex Samaje Perine or Mike Williams? Again, standard league. So
yeah, boy, that's a tough one because I love that matchup for the Lightning Bolts. I typically like to go with the running back, but I think here, because that could be a high scoring game, I'd probably go Mike Williams.
Just the touchdown upside. Yeah. I'm excited to watch Perine and just see what he does in this first week, how many touches he gets.
Yeah, me too. Hey, we're all going to school right now. Running backs, I'm sitting. You got to play Najee Harris. I get it. Niners, he's a risky RB2, and he's a low RB2. Niners were amazing against the run last year. Maybe that doesn't translate to this year. We're going to find out, but hard to like Najee this week. Hard to like the Cook brothers. This is the first time in the history of Stardom and Sid'em. I've been doing this article for over 20 years where I've had 2 brothers as Sid'ems at the same position. James Cook's got the Jets. They gave up only 7 rushing touchdowns to running backs last year. Only 2 running backs had more than 14.3 points against the Jets at home last year. I don't love James Cook. He's a flex at best. His brother's a flex at best. Buffalo's defense was good against the run last year, or good against running backs. He's a risk-reward flex RB2. I'd rather play Breece Hall, but I'd prefer not to play either. I don't love the matchup. And we didn't see these guys. They didn't play. They're both coming off injuries. So I'm a little concerned. Let's put it that way. I have to play Breece Hall in the league. I don't particularly love it. The matchup's not great. Jamal Williams, I get it. Volume is king and favorite. We get that. You know, the Titans defense last year, they allowed 8.4 points per game to running backs on the ground. That's it. They were so good against the run, and 3.4 yards per rush. Now, Williams could get into the end zone and not be awful. The matchup's tough. Tennessee's really good against the run. And then DeAndre Swift, I don't want to touch the Eagles running backs right now. I don't know who the hell to play. I saw the depth chart for the Eagles, and like they have 4 guys as their RB1. Thanks a lot. Really? Sirianni, I mean, can't help us a little bit? I get Kenneth Gainwell was the first guy on the list of the RB1s, but I don't know what the hell to do with that backfield. Patriots are good against the run too. At least they were last year, so I'm gonna fade them. Moving on to the wide receivers. Terry McLaurin may actually play this week. He's getting in full practices. Keep tabs on that. Still, I like Jahan Dotson. He's like a wide receiver 2 flex type. In this game against the Cardinals are going to stink. They're going to stink this year. They're going to be the worst team in the league. I think they're planning on being the worst. Did you see Jonathan Gannon's quote-unquote motivational speech that's rolling around, Tass, on social media?
Yeah, it hyped me up.
I mean, if I'm a player in that locker room, I'm like, dude, I need a nap after that. That was awful.
Yeah, I was being facetious, by the way. I don't know if you could tell, but
I know he was. Yeah, no, he was.
It was. Yeah,
that was awful. Yeah, I mean,
hopefully Caleb Williams can make a better rah-rah speech next year.
Oh, I know. Right? Well, if he comes out now, his dad's saying if he might get drafted by the team he don't want to go to, he may decide I'm not gonna come out. That would suck for the Cardinals. I like New Hopkins this week as like a wide receiver 2 flex type. Last time he played the Saints was last year. That was with the Cardinals. He had 10 catches. I like Drake London this week. A lot of it has to do with Desmond Ridder, but Carolina's defense, you know, we talk about schedule adjusted points, plus 25%. That's high. Receivers lined out wide last year against them, 4th most points scored. So I like Drake. We talked about Mike Williams. I like Mike Williams. Mike Williams is a deep threat. Okay. Last year, Miami allowed the 8th most yards to receivers lined out wide on targeted passes of 20 plus yards. I know that's a lot to spit out and to digest. It's good for Mike Williams, folks. Let's just say that. And Kellen Moore's going to want to throw the ball more than the Chargers did last year. And then Chris Godwin, listen, the Bucs could be playing from behind. It could be a negative game script, and not for nothing, but the Vikings defense was bad last year. So I do like Chris Godwin this week. Cortland Sutton's also a good play. I don't mind Mike Thomas as a flex this week either. Wide receivers that you want to fade, Hollywood Brown. I can't play any Cardinals with any kind of confidence catching passes from Joshua Dobbs. I can't. Could he get some garbage time points? Yeah, of course. So he's a wide receiver 3 flex, and he's risk reward at that. DJ Moore, a lot of people are going to play him. I get it. Again, I'm not going to come out here and say, bench flipping, the 4th string wide receiver in Pittsburgh. I'm not going to do that. I got to give you guys something to think about. DJ Moore has got a matchup against the Packers, who gave up 13 touchdowns to wide receivers last year. That's it. Packers were also on the negative side of the percentage when it came to schedule adjusted points against wide receivers. So I don't love DJ Moore this week. I don't love Michael Pittman Jr. Why? Rookie quarterback. And could he get some garbage time points? Yeah. I got to see Anthony Richardson throw the ball, man. I really do. That's one of the things I'm going to be paying attention to the most. Not starting Juju this week against the Eagles either. Probably the leading receiver for the Patriots. Still don't dig him. And I'm not starting Odell Beckham Jr. this week. He did pop on the injury report, so keep tabs on him. The Texans, and I know we talk about the Texans are so crappy. The Texans allowed the fewest schedule adjusted points last year to receivers at negative 21.9%. That's because teams ran the ball down their throats, and that's why I love Dobbins. But that's something to keep in mind. The Texans were actually really tough on wide receivers last year. Some other guys that you may want to fade, Gabe Davis, Jacoby Myers also on the lesser side of things. Tight ends. Let's get to the tight ends here. And this position is going to be a nightmare for people this week, especially if you lost Kelsey. You got some guys who are banged up too. Keep tabs on the status of Kittle, Andrews, although Andrews is back in practice. But I like Tyler Higbee a lot. Why? Who else are they going to throw the ball to? Van Jefferson? Tutu Atwell? Puka Nacua? It's going to be Higbee. He's going to get a lot of targets. The Seahawks were bad against tight ends last year. So start Tyler Higbee. I don't love Evan Ingram for the year. I'll play him against the Colts. He averaged right around 10 points per game in 2 games against Indianapolis last year. Their defense gave up 8+ fantasy points to tight ends 12 times last year, including 4 who had more than 13. So I'm gonna stick with Ingram as a low tight end 1. I like David Njoku this week against the Bengals. The last time he played the Bengals, he beat them for almost 19 points. And it seems like he's got a pretty good rapport there with Watson in Cleveland. And then if you're hurting Greg Dulcich, and I get like the Adam Troutman, yes, that's an issue. But Jerry Jeudy is hurt. We know Tim Patrick's out. We know KJ Hamler. I mean, the Broncos are hemorrhaging receivers, and Dulcich has got a rapport with Russell. So if this is like, I really need a tight end and I had a dart throw, I'll try Greg Dulcich and see what happens. Luke Musgrave is also worth a dart throw this week. Juwan Johnson also worth a dart throw. Sit him. I know you got to play Kyle Pitts. I get it. I understand. There's been no positive press about him. There's been nothing. Like, wow, this guy looked really great in camp. He's ready to be the unicorn that we all thought he was coming out of Florida. We haven't heard it. The Panthers also allowed the 10th fewest points to tight ends last year. And in 2 of the 4 games Pitts has faced them, he scored fewer than 5 points. Dalton Schultz from my beloveds, formerly of my beloveds. I'm not playing him against the Ravens and a rookie quarterback on the road. I'm not doing it. I want to see what CJ Stroud can give us. And I think we can do better than Schultz this week. Cole Kmet, not playing him against the Packers. And I'm not playing Irv Smith against the Browns. I like Irv Smith as a potential matchup-based starter, but the Browns gave up 2 touchdowns last year to tight ends. That was it. And they gave up fewer than 10 points per game to the position. So Irv Smith Jr. is going to be a fade for me. If you're looking at a few decent players that you might want to fade this week, guys who are big names in DFS, Schultz is $4,600, too expensive. Kyle Pitts is at $4,500, too expensive. I'm not going there. I'm just not doing it. All right, those are the starts and sits for the week. Got a lot that has been covered. I know you guys got a lot of questions out there, and I'm going to answer a few of them here that were sent out on X before we let you go. Alfonso Arellano, Pickens or Watson at wide receiver? Watson's banged up right now. Pickens is the safer play. Now, if we hear that Watson's good to go, I like his matchup better. But right now, I mean, Pickens is a safer play. But keep tabs on Watson with the injury because he's been missing practice.
Well, Dobbs is hurt too, right? So
Dobbs came back to practice, though, on Thursday.
Keep tabs on Reed too, because I think he could.
Jane Reed, yeah. Yep,
yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
Luke Musgrave, too. Yep.
It's such a young room that anyone could really pop off and then solidify themselves. Like, if Watson ends up being their wide receiver 2 on the year, like, would we be that surprised? I wouldn't, because Love's a new quarterback and he's starting to find his connections with his receivers. So any of these guys could end up popping down the road.
Yep, no question. Brock Purdy Stan, how do we proceed with Jahmyr Gibbs moving forward? It's 1 game. Would I have liked to have seen the usage be higher? Yeah. But Dan Campbell said they were going to bring him along slowly. I don't know that he's ever going to be worth a round 3 pick. I kind of was questioning that too, because like I would say David Montgomery's like in the prime of his career. They paid him. But Gibbs is a flex in PPR. You drafted him in the 3rd or 4th round. You got to roll with him unless you're really deep in the backfield. Alan Brand, Tony in trouble or first game rust, drop or stash or bench. Depends on the size of your league. If you're in a 14-team league, I ain't cutting him.
No.
If you're in a 10-team league, he probably is very cuttable. 12-team league, it's borderline, depends on your depth, honestly. Like, I'm in a 14-team league, I got him. I'm not cutting him. It's one game. I know he sucked, but it was one game, and it's the Chiefs. It's Mahomes. I'm not giving up yet. I mean, Kadarius Toney helped them win the Super Bowl. So he just happened to suck on Thursday. Don, who do you start this week, Geno or Lawrence? I like both. I'm going to go Lawrence against the Colts, but it's close. Geno's got a really good matchup against the Rams. I'm going to go Lawrence here with the new weapons. Hopefully they break out a little Calvin Ridley love this weekend, and the Jaguars score a boatload of points against the Colts, who have a lot of question marks going into the season. So that's it for this edition of the Believe Fantasy Football Show with myself, Michael Fabiano, and my guy Tass. Tass, what game before we go is the game that you're looking most forward to from a fantasy perspective? For me, it's Chargers-Dolphins.
That will be a really exciting game. I have a lot of Tyreek Hill stock and Mike Williams stock, so that's an important one for me. But it's that Sunday night football game, Fabs. It's got to be. Real life implications for us, fantasy implications for me. I've got Barkley. I've got CeeDee Lamb in about 3 leagues. So
I have so much CeeDee Lamb exposure. It's crazy. Yeah.
Me too. And I can't wait for Dak to throw for 3 touchdowns, all of them to CeeDee. It's going to be great.
I'll take 2 of those and give the other one to Brandon Cooks. It's fine with me. Or maybe even Jakey Ferguson. How about that?
Yeah. Get some people excited about Jay Fergo. I like it.
Do that. Everybody, good luck this week. It's week 1, folks. It's what we've been waiting for 8 months now. It is here. It's here. And we here at the Believe Fantasy Football Show are going to help you win a fantasy championship. So make sure that you're subscribing. You're tuning in every single week, Tuesdays and Fridays. We're going to help you get that chip. So for Tass, this is Fabs. Good luck this weekend. We'll see you next Tuesday.